Hey you with the goofy smile on your face. Feel like crying? Well, go visit your local car dealership because they're all full of cars with teensy turbos and boring automatics. They're sold with some BS marketing spiel that pulling a shift paddle is an involving emotional experience. Right. Here's a big orange middle finger to that load. This Mustang has a big naturally aspirated V8, a 6-speed that you shift yourself and rear-wheel drive like God intended. Better yet, it's also a car you might actually be able to afford, something that can't be said about most cars with more than 500 horsepower. Oh, did I mention it has more than 500 horsepower? Yep, the 2016 Ford Mustang Shelby GT350 has 526 of them, and it needs no marketing department. And now it's time for a physics lesson. I promise I'll make this as short and sweet as I possibly can, but for those of you who don't care to know the difference between a GT350's engine and say a GT's engine, well, you can go forward a couple of minutes and yeah. Thanks, guys. Now that we got rid of those losers, take a listen to this for a second. This is the soundtrack of the muscle car. It's the big burbly V8. Do you hear that burble, the blah, 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 blah? That's the soundtrack of the hot rod. And it happens because traditional V8s don't fire evenly between their two banks of cylinders. This Coyote V8 fires on the left, then the left again, then right, then left, then right, right, left, right, left, left, right. I can't do that quickly enough, so I brought in my friend Christian, who's a hyperactive drummer who just consumed, well, about a quarter kilo of the best Colombian coffee you can get. So Christian is going to play us a cross-plane Coyote V8 firing order in 8/8 time at, say, 675 RPM. Now, what would it sound like if the cylinders were firing at evenly spaced intervals? Left, right, left, right, left, right. Left, right, left, right, left, right. Christian? That's what we're talking about here. The GT350's V8 fires evenly between its two banks of cylinders, left, right, left, right. So it sounds more blah than it does blah, 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 blah. So it does this because it has a flat plane crank. And don't get hung up in this word flat plane. That describes the way the crankshaft looks. And you're never going to see the crankshaft in this car. The thing you need to remember is a flat plane V8 fires evenly, and that matters. Why? It makes more power. Well, you try 8,200 RPM in any other Mustang and you're getting towed back home. But this engine is really weird in a good way. It kind of no one home below 3,500 RPM, and then just, I mean, pulls. In fact, it pulls so hard, there's a shift light that reflects up in the windshield when you're getting close to $8,000. I wonder if that's to stop idiots like me from bouncing off the rev limiter. So, on to more things I love about it. Magnetic shocks. Now, you may think adaptive shocks are all about giving you a really good ride mode and a really crappy ride mode, but that's not the case with magnetic shocks. The thing about magnetic shocks is they react so quickly that they can change the way the shock is tuned in the middle of a corner, like 7 times a second or something. So, as I turn into a corner, the shocks can actually stiffen momentarily to slow slow down the body roll. It's not gonna stop the car from rolling, but it's gonna slow it down. Ditto when I got on the brakes. The shocks can stiffen up front and relax in the back, or do whatever the engineers want it to do to slow down the body controls. I can't tell from within the driver's seat if this Mustang has any body roll at all. I can't feel it. And the reason why, it's probably there, but it's just happening slow and it's controlled. And that's the benefit of magnetic shocks. Like all that screaming, and then you sort of relax, sit back, hit the gas, and there's no one home down low. I'd really love to see the dyno chart on this thing. Ask and ye shall receive, thanks to our friends at K&N Engineering. Well, that was loud. Peak numbers, 467 horsepower to the wheels, 374 pound-feet of torque. That's exactly what we expected, but peak numbers tell you nothing. It's the shape of the curve that matters, and specifically, the torque curve. Notice how at low engine speeds there's nobody home, then suddenly around 3,200 RPM, things change. This huge jump in torque is exactly what you feel in the driver's seat. The torque doesn't fall off at high revs either, and that of course means tons of horsepower. Look at the top of that curve now. The 8,200 RPM redline wasn't a marketing trick. This engine effectively makes peak power all the way until the computer shuts it down. Study up, kids, because this is what the dyno plot looks like for an engine you'll love to beat the snot out of day in and day out. The GT350 is codenamed Voodoo, and it doesn't really sound like a flat plane V8 and doesn't blip the way a flat plane V8 does. It sounds certainly different than the Coyote V8, the one in the regular Mustang, but this is not a Ferrari V8, and there are a bunch of reasons for it, all of which come down to packaging. They couldn't fit two different intake plenums, which is what you usually do on a flat plane V8. So they had to change the firing order a bit, which then caused them to have to add more weight to the crankshaft. And a lightweight crankshaft is the biggest benefit of a flat plane V8. They shaved 5 pounds out of the crankshaft. It went from 55 down to 50, but the last Ferrari crankshaft I weighed was 34, so there's still a long way to go. And then there was other packaging problems with putting the exhaust in, so they couldn't get equal length runners. And that means it's got a little bit of the cross-plane V8 burble, and it sounds like a Mustang, but it doesn't sound like a flat-plane V8. You might have some Audi-loving friends who will point out that 9 years ago, the RS4 came out with an 8,200 RPM V8 that made 101 horsepower per liter. All these years later, we're at 8,200 RPM, 102 horsepower per liter, and this expensive flat plane crank thing. It's a good point, but the RS4 was four-wheel drive and didn't do burnouts, and burnouts fix everything. Let's do one. Alrighty then. I'm gonna go off again on gearing. Ready? Here's first gear. Once you're at redline, the gears are really stacked closely on top of each other, but first gear is good for 55 miles an hour, and second gear is good for some speed that will get you in big trouble. Why? Why? You have a flat plane crank V8 that revs to 8,200 RPM and I get to use it once, and I'm going to jail. So the GT350, the Shelby, I'm not going to call this thing a Shelby. Shelby's dead. It's a GT350, and it was done by Ford's special vehicle team. So sorry, rest in peace, Shelby, whatever. This thing is a GT350. Anyway, we tested the GT350. It did 0 to 60 in 4.1 seconds, stopped from 60 in 102 feet, pulled a G on the skid pad, did a figure 8 in 24.2. This is some serious performance. Credit for a lot of that goes to the Michelin Pilot Super Sports, 295s in the front, 305s in the rear. They're huge. Then of course they're in the magnetic dampers, and then this motor. As good as this GT350 is on the street, I think it's going to be that much better on track. So pulling onto the track at Chuckwalla Valley Raceway.
The Shelby Mustang GT350.
Sir, with a madman at the wheel.
The flat plane crank that you've all dreamed about. And we're in track mode, that's why you can't hear me over this exhaust. That's only 4,500 RPM, we got 3,700 more to go. God. 501 horsepower?
526, I think, was the final count.
Rev, 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 rev.
Brake, brake, brake.
Yeah! Woo! Yeah, we got low gear.
Back there.
Woo! Mustang fun right here, kids.
I think my face is peeling off.
Stops well, doesn't it?
Stops really well.
These Mustangs have a tremendous amount of bite, especially initial bite in the brake zone.
Oh, yeah.
It stops right now, like real hard. Oh. I love the way the steering feels. You know what else I love is we come off this corner, boy, it puts the power down.
Yeah, a couple times there, you were going for the gas, and I thought, uh-oh, we're going around here.
Like right there?
Yeah. Nail it. Gas, 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 gas. Give me sideways. Flicking in. Gas. There we go. Gas. Do the horrible way. Yeah. All right. I'm learning to drive like me, like an idiot. It's great. I love it. Okay, enough about the track. What do you think about the car?
I think the car's pretty damn cool. Here, watch this.
That answered that.
Jason, I don't think anybody who buys a Shelby GT350 will be disappointed.
Oh God, no. God, no.
It delivers.
It delivers. It is so nice. It's so refreshing when a car company says, we're going to do something for the track and nail it. When they nail it, it's so good. There's nothing to complain about here.
The only thing that I recommend that you buyers out there in the world not do, don't drive the R first.
Yeah.
On track, anyway. Chuckwalla's pit straight gets us up to 4th gear. Flat plane crank, good for over 8,000 RPM. Oh man, these Michelins are special, tuned by Ford, and they did a great job. Holy cow, they stick. Coming right off the corner, hooked up. Body motions are well controlled. It's a full-on sports car. Roaring exhaust note. Good balance through the middle of the corner. I'm staying in 3rd using the bottom end. Power band still strong at 4,000. Got to be a little bit careful without braking in the middle of a corner. Enters the corner very nicely, all hooked up. That's my favorite part of any car's handling characteristic. How well does it put down power?
This Mustang is a breath of fresh air to those of us who drive our cars for the sake of driving our cars. Other car companies have lost the plot. The Germans, for example, have fallen completely out of love with driving. Want proof? BMW just made a front-wheel drive SUV. Suddenly, it's America building the best driver's cars. Here's a muscle car that can easily show the world's sports cars how it's done. We've never really tested any cars before at Chuckwalla Valley Raceway, so we don't have a basis of comparison for Randy's lap times. Judging by my friends who drive Mustangs, the only car that the GT350 needed to outrun was a cop car, so we brought one along, a Dodge Charger Pursuit. Randy ran a couple of laps and it was 15.17 seconds slower. And I think the lesson here is that if you have a car that's fast enough, it's a really good strategy to try to outrun the cops.
Out of the car, please.
Don't ever try to outrun me. Book 'em, Dano.